Joining me now is retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, who was commander of U.S. forces in Iraq from 2007 through 2009, and back with us, CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Rick Francona. General Hertling, Admiral Kirby talked about the U.S. adapting to the evolving tactics of ISIS. Beyond airstrikes, though, what do you expect to see? Because without ground troops, and I'm not talking about U.S. ground troops, but some sort of ground force that's able to operate and take advantage of whatever the U.S. is able to do from the air, how does ISIS actually get defeated?
Well, John brought up the point that both sides in a fight, and this is the history of warfare, Anderson, both sides have to adapt. The one that adapts faster is the one that's going to win, and that's what I think we're doing. We have 14 years of war in this category. I remember watching your program tonight. When I went to Iraq in 2007, I got some very good advice from my commander in Europe as I got ready to take my division over. He said, Mark, you're not going to be able to kill your way out of this. You're going to have to fight hard, but there's got to be diplomatic and economic efforts involved in this too. And I think that's what the value is of some of the things we're seeing on the ground right now. This isn't just the military leading the way. The coalition force is a Muslim force. They realize that they have to fight this enemy as much as anyone from the West has to do. And there's a lot of diplomatic and economic efforts going into this. We have to strangle ISIS from all aspects, economic, diplomatic, informational, and militarily.
Well, with General Hertling, that raises the question, is the Iraqi government, a new prime minister, the new president, besides the words that they're saying, which all sound promising, are they really able to do that political work? Are they able to reach out to the Sunni groups to try to get them away from ISIS? Because, as we know, under al-Maliki, the former prime minister, they were not.
There are indicators that they can, Anderson, but the question is, and you're asking the right questions, will they? And even if they can, and they would like to, it's still going to take time. You're talking about reestablishing trust with hundreds of Sunni tribal sheikhs, all of the provinces in the northern part of Iraq and the western part of Iraq. That took us, we made some efforts at that over a 18-month period of time when I was in northern Iraq, and we saw some growth. But that's been lost over the last 4 years, and it has to be overcome by this new government. It is not going to happen in days, weeks, months, or even years. It's going to take a long time.
Right. And Colonel Francona, to that point, cable news loves things to happen very quickly on a 24-hour news cycle, but we're talking about something which potentially we're talking about years here and a lot of very hard work. The hard work really begins not just tomorrow and the next day, but months from now.
Yeah, and although we've started this air campaign in Syria, I think the point that you make is very good. There's no ground forces on the horizon yet, and if we're talking an 18-month window before we're able to get these proxy ground forces in there, the Free Syrian Army that we're going to train in Saudi Arabia, I think we're in for a really, really long and disappointing air campaign, because we will run out of viable targets that you can strike without boots on the ground. At some point, once this shifts from fixed targets, from buildings, from hardened facilities, from large targets that we can actually strike without having people on the ground, then what do? You start this war of attrition, and you start dropping a lot of expensive ordnance to take out a Toyota, and we found that to be ineffective everywhere else. So at some point, we've got to move this to the next phase. Now, I think we can do that very well in Iraq. I think we're on the right path in Iraq. The general brings up a great point with the new inclusive government, but it's going to take a lot of time. We're trying to buy that time and space right now with these air attacks. Iraq, I really have, I'm cautiously optimistic about Iraq. Syria, I worry about, because we can do a lot of damage from the air, but we can't fix this from the air. And as the general said, you can't kill your way out of this. There's got to be a long-term solution. And right now, we're just pushing this down the road in Syria.
And there's
Anderson,
so many moving
say,
parts to this, so many moving pieces. Go ahead.
No, what I'd say is you bring up a very good point, because right now we're seeing the effects of big explosions and great video game type action, but there's a long slog in front of us, and I think it will take ground forces, and it will take time. And an Iraqi counterpart once told me, General, you have the watch, but we have the time. This is a century-old struggle between various aspects of Islam, of the Islamic faith, and various cultures over there. We have to adjust to them slightly. We can't put them on our timeline, and it's not going to be fast.
And Syria is not a static thing. There are things happening there all the time. And so what is the Assad government going to do in the meantime? Is he going to take advantage of what we're doing to ISIS? There's a whole lot of things that could happen there that we haven't foreseen.
Right, there's a whole lot of players here with a whole bunch of different motives, motivations, and ideas, and they're all going to be reacting in some ways we can't predict. Colonel Francona, appreciate you being on again. General Hertling as well. Thanks for your insight as always. Just ahead tonight, Iraq's Prime Minister sat down.